So today on the show, we have Sachin Nair. And as you can see in the background, we also traveled for this episode. I visited Sachin in their laboratory outside of Allentown, PA. He is the co-founder of a company called Hydron. Hydron is a desalination company that is a semi-finalist in the Global X Prize for water scarcity. If you don't know what that is yet, it already sounds amazing because of the name. But you can look it up if you want more information. We talk about it in the episode, so you could just do that as well. But Sachin has an awesome perspective on not only what it looks like to go from lab to commercial deployment, but he also has a great relationship to entrepreneurship. He had a very steady corporate job for a long time, had this idea that he knew could change the world, and felt the responsibility, which is a theme that we see on The Grove, but felt the responsibility to bring this impact to the world. So it was a very inspiring conversation. I know you'll find it as well. Thank you as always to our sponsors, Clean Tech Growth Lab. If you're looking to grow in clean tech, they are the people to do it with, and the producers of this podcast, Craze and Friends. And with that, I give you Sachin. Oh, welcome to another episode of The Grove. Shout out to our sponsors mentioned just before this, but without them, it would not be possible to interview awesome people doing awesome things like Sachin. Welcome.
Thank you.
What's going on? So, big topic of the day, desalination.
Sure.
Other topics, water scarcity. What are we going to do? There's all this information that I've been exposed to recently about the state of water, the interest in water, investment vehicles, people that are getting excited or worried, whatever's driving capital. But desalination is a very interesting space, very interesting solution to certain problems in general. You have a very interesting approach to it. So before we get into what it's been like to grow this company and where you guys are going, if you give a brief introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Sure. Sachin Nair, I'm co-founder, CEO of Hydron. We are a water technology company trying to solve this huge environmental issue, and we're in the desalination space. Right now, we're just focused on oil and gas, wastewater, but desalination is a global problem, right? Anytime you make anything that uses water in the chemistry, now you end up, once you make your product, you end up with that wastewater that is very salty. The same thing with drilling for oil. When you drill for oil, it comes with 4 to 5 times water than oil. Then what do you do with that water is the question, because it's too salty for a lot of technologies, and that's what we're trying to address. Right? If you talk about an environmental problem for our generation, this is one of them. And that's one of the main reasons for me to do this. Quick introduction on myself.
Yeah.
I'm a chemical engineer by training. And I build new chemistries that come out of the lab. How do you scale that up, right? How do you make a larger plant? How do you build large facilities that can build or make tons and tons of material, right? That's been my background and that's my experience. And I'm bringing that to Hydron, where we are taking this from the lab, as you see here, into commercial units that we're building out.
So then question, did you ever imagine you would be a founder? Or
No.
did something happen at some point you said, now I'm going to do it?
No, this all came about together. This is an idea I've had for a while, and me and my co-founder Sarah, we met on Y Combinator. We started talking about the problem, and it just came together. It was just not premeditated. I didn't think we would form a company like this. But then the question came up, who is going to do this? I have a lot of friends, and I was in the oil industry as well, that talk about this kind of wastewater. And it was a time, to see, okay, let's give it a shot. And here we are.
So what was that moment though? So you said you and your co-founder met on Y Combinator.
Yes.
So I guess there was a moment in time where, I guess that would have been after you had decided to pursue it, or maybe you were messing around with the idea. When was it that you came across this approach or desalination as a concept? And what was the process of going from, okay, no way I would do this, to maybe I'll do it, to now we're here, you know?
Yes, so there was a process involved. Once we talked about this idea, and obviously I do my homework. That's the first thing. So I had a full-time job before this, and I continued doing that while I was working on this conceptually to see if all the numbers added up. You know, as an engineer, it was important for me to figure out if the technology is going to do what it's supposed to. And this is not a new concept, right? There's this concept's been around for a while, but people have never implemented it the way we are doing. So went back to the drawing board, did the numbers, and I convinced myself first that this is doable. And
How long ago was that?
This was about a year ago.
Okay, all right, great.
And then we found this lab space here at Ben Franklin Tech Ventures. There was a lot of startup companies, as you saw.
Well, after you'd met your co-founder, right?
Yes.
So you had convinced yourself that it was doable.
Yes.
And then you said, okay, first thing I'm going to do is go to Y Combinator, or did you do something else?
No, so we've met on Y Combinator and we talked about the problem while we were there.
Right. Okay.
And then the question was, and at the time I had a full-time job.
Right, yes.
So then the question was, how do we take this forward?
Yeah.
And there was no way you could develop a technology like this part-time. And then, sure enough, quit my job. And here we are.
Well, that's a massive decision to do that. So
It is.
I think just, the reason I like to cover a little bit about the personal journey, outside of building the technology, commercialization stuff, is because a lot of times growing a business comes down to the people. And there are so many people that have great ideas and they pursue it for a period of time, and they just don't go through with it for long enough or consistently enough, or they never leave the part-time job,
right.
the full-time job. The opportunity is always there, and then you never jump off the deep end. So
yes.
So how is it that you made that decision? And if there was somebody that was listening that is in a similar position, has this idea, and maybe hopefully it's not a competing technology, but if someone else, has a full-time job, that have something very impactful they could bring to the world, and they're just not sure about leaving a full-time job, what do you say to that?
A startup, from what I've known at the time, requires undivided attention. There can be no part-time. It has to be something that you feel from the inside. And that's my case. I was like, if this has to succeed, it has to be 100% on my effort. And there was no ifs and buts about it. And I just said, let's do it. And I think that any kind of startup requires that kind of attention. And this problem requires that kind of attention from someone like me. I looked at, obviously when you do a startup, you look at who else is doing this. And I did that. And I looked at the teams, and it was very clear that someone with my background can get this done. And convincing myself to do that was the first thing. And the second thing was convincing my wife to accept that, So if there's other founders out there who are trying, or who have great ideas, but they want to do something, I would recommend take the leap. The younger you are, the better. So, but in our case, I had 100% support from my family.
Incredible.
And that's important. This is not an easy journey.
Yeah.
And there is ups and downs. There's a lot of downs, and there are some highlights. So it's like can you survive that?
Right.
And jumping full on was the only way to do it.
Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for making that decision, because we wouldn't be here today talking about it. So if that decision happened around a year ago, would you say?
Yeah.
So around a year ago, 2 questions for you. First, is there anything that came from your career or your life even before a year ago that has significantly impacted the way that you choose to navigate this experience? And then Second, over the last year, what have you learned?
Sure. So I've always been part of teams that build out new techs, and typically in an R&D environment in a large chemical company, you work on a project a couple of years, you take it through commercialization, and you move on. And so you see a lot of different things, and I would say half the things that I worked on didn't go anywhere in these roles, and you pick up all these things that technically that may not work, and that's what me and my team is bringing to the table. We've done this for so long, we know technically where things are going to break, and what not to waste time on. And so and I looked at, like I said, the other teams working on this kind of problems, these kind of technologies, and I didn't see the depth of experience that we may have. So that is what we're
Great.
trying to be, how we're trying to be different, because like I said, as a problem, this requires this kind of attention. And so that's been our goal from the beginning.
And I guess I'd say, other than the fact that there are a lot of downs, is there anything that the last 12 months has taught you that you're bringing into the next 12 months?
Oh, 100%. So most of this comes from our customers. So when we talk about this kind of technology, their feedback has been critical. We, for example, we are a qualified team for the X Prize Water Scarcity contest.
Congrats.
Thank you. So we built a demonstration unit for that, and our initial thinking was we'll build a much larger pilot facility so that we can demonstrate the technology. But when we went out to our customers, they were happy with just that smaller demonstration unit being deployed at their site. And so we said, okay, that's what we're going to do. So you have to be agile. You have to be flexible enough that your plans can change every other day. And so that is one important thing that I've learned, and that is a core strength for startups, right? As having being part of larger companies, you couldn't do that because you have 4 layers of management you have to get approval for changes. In our case, we make turns on a dime, right? And that is very advantageous to us. So a customer comes to us with a water sample, we get that turned around in a couple of days. So this really gives us an edge, and we, that's one of the things I've learned, and also the freedom, right? You get to pick what you work on a particular day, depending on what the demands are. And that also is a core strength for startups, right? And that's why you see this trend if you look at like traditional chemical industry, they grow and grow, and then at some point split off because the efficiency is just lost. Right.
Good. Well, then let's cover our bases and just talk about what desalination is, just to cover it. I will say, just from one of my recent podcast episodes, I learned for the first time that desalination is not just not just salt from water, but it's ions from water.
Right.
Is that true?
It is true.
Oh,
yes.
come on.
So
what is desalination?
Desalination is like anytime you take any component out of water, right? Like it need not be. So salt can be like typical like table salt, like sodium chloride. It could also be magnesium chloride or all these other components that are just dissolved in the water. Right. Well, the problem, and depending on the industry, with oil and gas, it's a lot of sulfates and chlorides and other things in the water. So if it's based from a textile industry, it's going to be very different based on what the process is. So, but how do you take that salt out of the water? What technologies do you use? And that is desalination. And once you take those components out of the water, what you get is clean water, which you can use for all kinds of industrial purposes. You can also use it for drinking or ag purposes, right? So that is desalination.
So how has, just a brief history that you're not going through the whole story of desalination, but how did the current makeup of the market come to be? The first instances of it were the 60s. I have no idea.
Right.
But,
50 years ago, you're right.
Man, we're on a roll. So the first instances of it are back then. I know desalination happens at wastewater facilities, for example. You're talking about industry, oil and gas. So how did it come about that the desalination industry is where it is now?
Right. So the first method of desalination is boiling off the water, right?
Okay.
You boil off the water, you condense it, you get clean water on the other end. That was the only known way to do it. But that takes a lot of energy, right? In the last, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there was a lot of new polymers that was invented at DuPont, one of the places I worked at. So the plastics made it possible to make a filter that can filter out the salts, right? So that was where reverse osmosis comes in. What it is you push the clean water through a filter at high pressure. Only the water gets through. Everything else stays on the other side. And then at that point, after a few years, the filter dies, and then you replace it, get a new one, just like you filter it in your house. So that's how desalination really works, and that's the history. So 50, 60 years ago, you built a lot of these polymer systems, plastic membranes, and it's grown, right? Almost all of the Middle East drinking water is coming from seawater reverse osmosis systems. And they have limitations, which is on how much salt. So eventually, when you push something through a filter, it gets clogged.
Sure.
And what we're trying to do is get around that problem because we are not using a filter in our process.
Okay.
That's how it's different from other technologies.
So then, good transition, because that is one of my next questions is, what you guys are doing in the field. But basically, are you saying that there's really just two halves to the story, which is first that method that you spoke about where you evaporate the water and then capture it, and then second is reverse osmosis. Is there really not been any major steps, I guess, or changes in that timeline until now?
That's right. Yeah. So those are the two main the thermal technology. So you can evaporate the water using heat, boil it off, and then you have the membrane systems. And this is what we're trying to do is the third type of desalination system. And this, see, every technology has its own advantages and disadvantages.
Sure.
Ours is only looking at wastewater that's really, really salty, that these other technologies cannot work with. For example, when you boil off water with a lot of salt in it, that salt, once the water goes off, the salt is going to deposit on the surface of anything that's heating up. And then eventually it's just going to scale it, right? Then you have to scrape the thing off or clean it off somehow, and it's going to be very difficult. So what we're trying to do is not do that. Our technology does not have that kind of heating surfaces.
So now is Hydron. So we've made it. So how was it that you came across this new method, or because it's always amazing to me to learn about a history of an industry that has been as extensive as desalination, that has been dominated by two approaches, and all of a sudden we have a new approach that is seemingly viable. How did you come across this, and why is it that you're convinced that this has a place?
Right. So with Hydron, we looked at what are the bottlenecks. The bottlenecks is how much energy do you need to run your process, because that defines your economics. So we try to look at all the technologies out there, see how can we reduce the overall energy footprint to desalinate. That's how we came across this idea. This is not a new idea. This literature to do this, the way we desalinate, has been in the literature for the last, 30, 40 years.
Okay.
So what we said is, okay, why hasn't it really taken off?
Good question.
Right. So it is based on the economics. So what we did is, remember I was talking about doing the homework,
Yes.
is go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what do the numbers look like? How can we make this 5 times better? And that's kind of what we've done. We've taken that, we've spent enough time in the lab to make what's out there 5 times better. Now we are economic. Now this can compete with every other technology there is out there. Before that, there was this huge gap, and people wouldn't want to adopt, right? So that's the job for any startup. You need to have that advantage over other technologies, right? And also the need is there. For example, in Texas, the oil and gas water has no place. So right now, you cannot put it underground, because when you put it underground, it causes earthquakes.
Sure.
Right? Or if you have to store it above ground. But you're making 20 million barrels a day.
Yeah.
How much can you store above ground?
Sure, yeah.
So right now there is a huge demand for this technology, and they're willing to pay. Right. So that closes the price, gap.
Sure. Okay. So we have this idea. You did the homework. You convinced yourselves. We can get a little bit into the technology, but what I'm most fascinated by is now you have this novel approach to something extremely difficult. How do you go about getting the first customers? Because a lot of times in these industries, the slowest moving industries, hard to abate industries, nobody wants to be the first or the second or the fifth. Everyone will be the 10th. They're like, hey, come on, do it, But how have you managed to build your first partnerships?
So we've been lucky enough, and our business is based on price. What we're saying is, we will do this for a third of the cost of your disposal. So our customers are paying, let's say, $1 per barrel of water to dispose of it, get rid of it.
Is this just cold outreach? You just called them, say, hey, we'll do this for you? Or?
Conferences, contacts in the industry.
Okay.
So, and once we reach out to them, say that, okay, this is our price point. We'll say we are 30 cents a barrel. And they're obviously interested.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's our job to convince them that our technology actually can deliver at that price, right? And we have done enough homework in terms of our pricing and our design and our engineering to convince them that, yes, this is possible.
Yeah.
Plus, we have been testing their waters in our lab, and we have shared our results with them.
Yeah.
So for them, now it's taking that leap into saying that, okay, this small thing in the lab here can deliver what they're saying, but can it actually work when it's 10 times as big?
Correct.
Or 50 times as big?
Right.
So that's why we're building this out in stages. So our demo unit is much bigger than what you see here in the lab.
Yeah.
It can do 5 to 10 barrels a day.
Yeah.
And we've already run that for X price. And it can deliver the results.
Wow.
So then the question is the next step. So you go in stages.
So then at the very beginning, you went to conferences and you reached out to contacts in the industry, and you started with tests in the lab.
Yes.
To validate.
Yes.
So once you had enough validation, how was it that you went? How was it that you financed? How was it that you established the relationship with a partner to be able to deploy a pilot on site? Was it just an evolution of that existing relationship, or was it again a new?
Right. So we have been testing their water. We have relationship with their technical team, so they understand how we work, what kind of technical data we provide in terms of our testing, and we share whatever we can in terms of the technology, and that's enough to convince their technical team that this is viable at this price point.
Okay.
And then the question is, obviously, these systems are not run by people sitting in their offices. It's run by technicians out in the field, and they have to be comfortable with this. So that's what we're doing right now. So we have one small demonstration unit that we are deploying to a customer, and we want to build multiples of these to go to multiple customers. So that's what we're doing right now. Okay. So in that way, we integrate the technology very early on with our customers' teams, and they're comfortable with it because it's a step change. It doesn't look like any other membrane system or any other desalination system. So they have to get accepted by the people who are going to run this.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing right now.
So to the extent that you can discuss it, what is specifically the innovation that you guys have achieved?
Right. So what our process does is it's a liquid that sucks up clean water like a sponge. So you mix our liquid with dirty water, it picks up clean water, and then we warm it up. And once you do that, it rejects that clean water it sucked up. So it's like squeezing the sponge on one side, and you keep doing that, right? So you pick up clean water on one side, you squeeze the sponge on the other side, and you keep doing that. So this liquid just goes around in a closed loop. So that's why it doesn't really matter how much salt there is, because it's only going to pick up clean water, and that's it.
Wow. So what do you see? Okay, so two questions. First one's, I guess, not specifically related to your trajectory, but there's a really interesting conversation at this event in New York that I went to around water technology, and it was about the viability of a market for after desalination, the brine that's left over,
Yes.
mining that for the nutrients inside of it. So
Yes.
is there anything that you guys have to do with that because it's your technology, or is it still up to the company to do with that brine what they would like?
See, oil and gas customers, those are our biggest customers right now. Their biggest problem is the disposal. How do you get rid of this stuff?
Sure.
So what we're saying is we'll clean up at least half of it.
Sure.
Right. The rest of the half, they're just going to do whatever they were doing with their original water. So, they save on that 50%.
Okay.
Right. But if we have to extract like lithium, there is quite a bit of lithium in this produced water that we can extract. So, but we're not really focused on that right now.
Okay.
There are other technologies, other startups, other companies who can take our concentrate and pull out lithium or iodine or any of the other components. Okay. And we are talking to some of them.
Cool.
But that's not the focus for the company. Right?
Great. So, well, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious. But so then, as far as when you're seeing something that's very close to my heart is commercialization, is go to market of technologies like yours. And so, when you're looking at let's just say oil and gas, because that's where you're focused at the moment. When you're looking at the market for oil and gas companies, how is it that you anticipate navigating that space? Is it leveraging, again, the existing relationships? How do you anticipate, getting in touch with new ones? Are we talking about specifically, America and Texas? I think on the phone we spoke about Canada and something like that. So yeah, what are your thoughts around positioning yourself there?
With oil and gas, it's not a huge, customer base if you think about it. There is 5 or 6 large players, their names, and then they hand over the water to water processing companies. And there's maybe 25, 30 of them, just in the US. But they're all, and that is the depth of the market and the customer. And we've talked to at least half of these water processing companies, and they are really interested. So in terms of us getting a market penetration, as long as we can convince a couple of them, the news just spreads. We don't have to spend any more time on convincing others. And that is really, and everybody's connected. It's not like this huge customer base that we need to address.
Yeah.
So in that respect, we're pretty lucky.
Nice. Okay. So then, in the same way, I've spoken to a couple other people in the space, and just like anything, I guess it surprised me because I knew nothing about desalination before, interviewing a bunch of people in the space on this podcast. But it's something interesting to me, creating a technology that specifically addresses a certain kind of wastewater. Because in my ignorance, like, there's just dirty water and it needs to be cleaned, and so there's a lot of different kinds of wastewater, and there's a lot of different kinds of technologies, some that are built specifically for some kinds of wastewater. So how is it that, how many of the technologies, desalination technologies that exist are looking to address this similar space, which is the extracted water from oil and gas or mining maybe? And how many of them are more, I don't know, wastewater facility treatment plant oriented? Who else is playing in this space?
There is obviously all of the traditional desalination technologies, the thermal technologies that are pretty much very mature.
Okay.
Then the membrane-based reverse osmosis, forward osmosis, these kind of technologies that are also fairly, advanced in terms of who the players are, the big players. And they build, multi-billion-dollar facilities out in the Middle East, providing critical drinking water for the communities. And so that system is established. What we are trying to address is the other waters that cannot be treated efficiently. And there are a few startups in the space, and we are all trying to do the same thing, working on similar technologies, different configurations. And frankly, there is enough business. And there is, as far as I see it, this is not a competition. We all need to succeed. And that's where I'm coming from, because there is so much water to be treated. In Texas, we make, like I said, 20 million barrels of this water a day. That's enough to supply New York City for 8 months. So this is the amount of water we make in a day. So, I want all of us to succeed. And each of the technologies is specified for a particular waste stream. It makes us really focused and make sure we succeed in that, lane.
Right.
So instead of us, looking at 5 different types of water chemistries, and water chemistries are all different, and how they interact with your system or your technology is also different. So if you try to focus on multiple different kinds of waterways, it's like saying there is crude oil, then there is like gas, then there's diesel, then there is, so it's just like that. The chemistries are so different.
Right.
So you have to, fix and focus on one lane, and that's what we're doing.
So is that then the vision for the next 12 months, let's say, 12, 18 months?
That'll be the vision for the next 24 months at least.
24 months. 24
Focused
days.
on oil and gas wastewater.
Okay.
And get ourselves through the pilot phase and to the commercial phase. And then we'll see.
Great. Something that I wanted to make sure to cover in the theme of going to market and commercialization is that you're here, you're doing this, you have your experience, you got great energy, for this problem, which I love. You have your co-founder, who I'm excited to meet at someday, and your team of interns. How has it been for you to delegate, to hire the talent needed to fuel this?
It is critical. As an engineer, that's been my greatest blessing, I would say. I just had great mentors who guided me. And this is what we're trying to do even with the company, right? This is not a sexy space. You probably heard from other founders. Water, everybody takes it for granted, right?
Yeah, it depends who you ask. I think it's pretty sexy, but no, I get what you're saying.
So that's the thing, right? Everybody's talking about the newest, latest technologies out there, but water technologies everybody thinks it's mature. There's nothing more to do there, right? So how do we bring interest to this area? How do you bring new talent? And that's what we're trying to do here. So we have a great team of young engineers, and they're excited about this problem. And the thing with oil and gas is got a bad rep. It's because it's, if you talk about global warming, if you talk about all these issues with pollution, but even if everybody has an electric car, you still need plastics. You still need all these components that come from oil and gas. You cannot replace it. The best way to fix this is to make it clean. right? And how do we bring people on board so that they are excited about this problem? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's such a. I. It has been brought up a number of times in a few episodes, and it is something that has drastically changed my own opinion about climate change, about this, the biggest umbrella under which what we're talking about, climate tech, all this, making it clean, all of this stuff. And the shift in perspective of looking at it and saying oil and gas, we've, for whatever reasons, have very significantly built the foundation of our society on top of. And so I had a very interesting conversation about what a transition looks like, which is a different conversation. But the reality is we do need it, like you're saying. So the approach is to not demonizing it, but looking at it and saying this needs to change.
Right.
This is a huge reason why we're in this position in the first place. But it's not like we can just have it disappear. Things would fall apart. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So I have two more planned questions for you. And the first one is, what is the biggest hurdle for you right now as far as growing Hydron? And how is it also an opportunity?
So obviously, as all startups, our biggest hurdle is capital. So we need capital to grow. We need capital to deploy these units. And this is a hardware-intensive process. We have to make stuff that needs to get deployed at customer sites before we can generate more business. That's just the way it is. And that requires a lot more capital than if you think about a software business or any service-based business, right? So that is our biggest bottleneck. And the second thing is obviously talent is a problem. The new generation, we want them excited about this problem, especially with water and engineering. It's difficult to find the right talent, I have to say. And so we're trying to bridge both. And that's why we have relationship. We are here at Lehigh University. We have their IBE program interns working with us. It's been a fantastic cohort this year.
Cool. I'm really happy to shout out Ben Franklin Partners.
Yes.
And
Lehigh University.
And Lehigh, so that's nice. And it's beautiful outside as well. I'm not getting paid to say that. So. But so the last thing then, with all this work to be done and the importance of what you're working on, what inspires you?
Oh, I can see how this is going to turn out at the end. And that's what drives me. I can see, these commercial units cleaning water at these sites for our customers, and in broader, making, usable water for all kinds of new purposes, which really didn't exist, and it's something that that just drives me. It's like, it's like finding, a new water source, like completely out of nowhere, right? That didn't exist. So, yeah.
Well, that definitely inspires me, and I'm really excited personally about your technology and what you guys are building, and that's why I wanted to come out here and do this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Yes.
If anyone else was inspired to get in touch or follow along, what's the best way to do that?
You can find me at hydrondesal.com. So that's one place, and we're also on LinkedIn and all social media. So reach out, come work for us, and
That's right.
Come explore the technology, and let's fix this.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome. Well, this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Blake.
Look forward to the next one.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.